Good morning, Jack. It's me. It's June 3rd, 6:02 a.m. I woke up with one of those headaches, the kind that makes your whole head feel sort of occupied. It's not really sharp, and thankfully it's not a migraine. It's just this awful splitting pressure right through my forehead, sitting between my eyes. It's like I slept with my jaw clenched, and all of my thoughts got trapped in there overnight and swelled up. I'm going to ignore it today, which sounds kind of brave when I say it like that, but it really just means that I took 2 aspirin with my coffee before I'd even properly opened the curtains, and now I'm pretending that it counts as resilience. It's been raining since before I woke up. It's not storming or anything dramatic. It's just this gross little rain, thin and steady. It looks sort of mean, in a lazy way. The porch boards are dark with the rain, and the trees look darker too. Everything else looks kinda slick and patient. The whole morning just feels damp. I had a dream again, Jack. Not one I can tell properly. That's sort of the trouble with dreams, isn't it? They don't really stay in your head as the full thing most of the time. They just sort of linger in pieces and flashes, maybe a hand or a sound. I know I was someone else again. Or maybe I was still me and just in somebody else's body. I don't know how to say that without sounding ridiculous, Jack. But it was a dream, and dreams do tend to be pretty ridiculous. They're allowed to be. There was bare feet moving too fast over the wet ground. It was the kind of running that feels ugly. It was all panic and no grace. I looked down in the dream, and I knew right away again that those feet weren't mine, even though nothing was obviously wrong with them. It was just that awful certainty again, Jack. And the dress was there again. That plum purple thing with the black lace at the hem. The one I would never wear awake in 1,000 years because it was far too pretty and too thin and far too much like I would be asking for trouble. I wasn't being dragged this time. Not at first, at least. I was running, trying to get to the clearing, I think. Which is strange, isn't it? Most of the time in dreams like that, you're trying to get away from somewhere. But in this one, I was trying to reach it. Like I thought if I could just get there first, everything would stop or something would make sense. But somebody was behind me, Jack. I never saw who, and I never turned around enough to catch a glimpse. But I could feel it. That awful close feeling. Another body moving through the woods too fast and not caring what it scraped itself on to keep up with me. And then I woke up with my head splitting open and the rain doing that little ticking sound against the windows. So, good morning to me, I guess. I'm standing in the kitchen now in my nightgown. My coffee's gone cold, and I have one sock on because I lost the other one sometime during the night. It smells damp in here. Not rotten, just cabin damp. Wet wood and old air, and a little bit like coffee grounds. Anka wasn't on the porch when I checked, and that bothered me more than it should have, which is embarrassing because he is, at the end of the day, just a cat with terrible manners and an inflated sense of mystery. Still, I looked for him. The towel and the little bowl are both out there still, getting damp again, and I should probably bring the towel in. Stop pretending I'm running some respectable little lodge for stray little beasts. Maybe I will later. I probably won't. I haven't gotten dressed yet, but I probably should because I have the dinner shift and I can't spend all day skulking around in my nightgown like a widow in a film. Though honestly, this weather does make me want to drift around the house in something thin and tragic and stare out at the trees like I'm waiting for a telegram to tell me my long-lost husband has died. Okay, I know, Jack, that's pretty dramatic. I'm going to finally drink my coffee now and maybe make some toast and eggs if I feel ambitious enough. Something with enough substance to soak up the headache and whatever parts of the dream are still trying to stick to me. I'll talk to you later, Jack. Jack, it's 8:47 a.m. I was cracking eggs into the pan when I heard a knock, and at first I thought maybe I imagined it, because rain has a way of making every little sound feel more personal than it really is. But then it came again. 3 knocks. It wasn't hard, but it was persistent. I looked through the window first, which is stupid of me because I couldn't really see who was standing in front of the door. But I knew it was Dennis before I opened it. I don't know how I knew. Maybe because there's only so many people who would knock on my door like that first thing in the morning. He looked wet. He wasn't really soaked through, just those dark little patches on the shoulders of his work shirt where the rain caught him when he was coming up my driveway. His hair was damp at the temples, and he hadn't shaved yet, I don't think. Or maybe he had, and I was just looking at him too hard. He had the tired look around his eyes that made a man seem either far too honest or too dangerous, depending on the day. He said, "Can I come in?" Like he already knew I'd say yes. And I did say yes. He stepped inside and wiped his boots off on the mat without having me ask him to, which for some reason made my chest ache a little. Just the tiny ordinary politeness of it. I asked him what he was doing here so early, and he sort of looked past me and into the kitchen, at the eggs in the pan and the coffee, and all of my half attempt at a normal morning. And then he said, "I wanted to talk to you before work." Not my work, his. He sounded serious enough that my stomach did that little drop. I thought maybe he would say something bad had happened, or maybe he'd come to tell me to stop calling him, to stop asking, and to stop making myself a part of whatever mess he'd already been living in before I ever put my hands on him. But that wasn't it. He apologized. Properly, I mean, Jack, he really apologized. Not in that half-joking way where people apologize when what they really want is to move on without feeling too bad. He looked at me and he said he was sorry for not telling me Lila had left, and that he wasn't trying to do anything against me. I asked him what it was then. He leaned one hand on the back of the couch and said, "I just wanted to make sure she was really gone this time." I don't know what I think about that, Jack. Not yet. It's a sad thing to say. Maybe it was a hopeful thing. Really gone this time. It sounds like a man who's tired of being left. It sounds like a man who's been waiting. I didn't press for more right away because the eggs were starting to overcook, and suddenly there we were having a conversation that felt far too large for an empty stomach, and I couldn't stand there holding the spatula like an idiot while his whole marriage sat dripping rainwater into my cabin. So I turned back to the kitchen and I told him he might as well sit down if he was going to be saying heavy things before 7 in the morning. He laughed a little. It wasn't a big laugh, but just enough to make him sound like himself again. And so then he was sitting at my kitchen table and I was making breakfast for a semi-married man while I was still in my nightgown. Which is maybe not the sort of thing that one should narrate out loud if one wants to sound like a decent person, but it's true. I made eggs and toast, and then I sliced up the last little bit of potatoes because it felt stupid not to if he was going to stay long enough to talk. He offered to help, and I told him no because I didn't want him moving around my kitchen all familiar and making me feel things that I can't afford to feel this early in the day. That sounds wise, but I promise it was not wisdom. It was cowardice, Jack. He looked tired, not frightened or secretive or anything malicious. Just tired, Jack. My headache's still there, but quieter. Or maybe it just moved somewhere less noticeable because somebody else was in the room and my body likes to reshuffle its little miseries when it's being perceived. He's gone now. He left for the shop maybe 10 minutes ago. And now I'm out on the porch with my coffee trying not to replay the whole morning over and over again. Breakfast was nice. And I know this sounds dangerous, but it was. It was really nice. The rain kept going the whole time. Soft little hissing rain, not enough to make the windows rattle or anything, just enough to make the world outside seem further away, and the kitchen felt smaller in a good way. Safer, maybe. We ate at the table. There was nothing romantic about it, not in the obvious sense at least. It was just eggs and toast and potatoes and coffee, with him sitting there in his work shirt, and me finally changed into a sweater because I could not bear the idea of frying potatoes in front of him in my nightgown any longer than I already had. He said I looked tired. I told him that was a rude comment, and he said, "You always look nice tired." I smiled like an idiot. He talked more than I expected him to. Not about anything huge, just the little things. He told me about a truck up on the lift giving him trouble, and somebody coming in twice this week because they swore they heard the same noise coming back even after he fixed it. The rain making customers track mud into the shop, and little ordinary things, shop things, just the kind of details people only offer when they're either comfortable or trying very hard to seem comfortable. I asked him if he slept, And then he looked at his coffee for a second before saying, "I slept some." I hate that word lately, Jack. Some? But I let it go. And he said he should have told me sooner about Lila, and that he knew that, and that it wasn't fair to leave me feeling like I'd been asking after a ghost in the next room. That's not exactly how he put it, but that's how my head twisted it. He said he didn't know how to talk about her with me. He said that part quietly, like it embarrassed him more than the rest of it. And I believed him, Jack. Or at least I want to. Those are not always the same thing. I asked if he was all right, and he gave me that tired little shrug that men do when they'd rather sand down their bones than answer a direct question honestly. And then he said, "I'm standing, aren't I?" Which mentally I thought was pretty ironic since he was sitting down at my table. But I didn't say any of that out loud. I told him that didn't count, and for a second he smiled in that real way again, the one that makes him look younger than he is. It wasn't really an innocent smile, just less heavy. And we talked about other things after that. Somehow Anka got brought up. And I told him the cat still acts like I'm inconveniencing him by feeding him. And Dennis said that sounds about right for a creature who knows he'll be worshipped no matter what. And then he asked if Anka had come inside again. I said no, not since that morning. And I don't know why that made me feel protective all of a sudden. As if I had let too many people know that the cat had crossed the threshold once. He stayed long enough to finish a second cup of coffee, and that alone felt dangerous. I kept catching these little domestic flashes of it all, and I tried very hard not to hold on to it, Jack. His plate at my table and his hand around my mug for a second because he picked it up by mistake. Stupid things, just small things. The kinds of things that women build false futures out of if they're not careful. I'm trying to be careful, Jack. I don't know if I'm succeeding. Before he left, he stood in the doorway with the rain behind him and said, "I didn't want you thinking I was keeping things from you because of you." I said, "That's a strange sentence." And he laughed and said, "You know what I mean." And I did know what he meant. At least I think I did. And then he pressed a kiss to my hairline like a punctuation, and then he was gone down the path and back to his truck, out of the rain, back to all the parts of his life that don't fit neatly into my kitchen. And I should probably feel worse about how nice all of it was. Maybe I will later. Oh, Jack, Anka's coming up the driveway. I could hear his little crunch of the gravel under his paws, and he looks ridiculous, damp along the back. His tail's up like some tiny self-important official arriving late to inspect the property. Oh, hold on. Jackie's coming right up the steps like he owns this place. Of course he is. It's ridiculous how he's shaking himself like a dog, which I didn't know cats could do with that much insult in the movement. Now he's just sitting there looking at me like I'd arranged the weather badly on purpose. He's in my lap now, Jack, staring out at the yard with that little flat face of his like he's waiting for some deep important force secret to make an appointment with his little official self. Maybe we're becoming something like friends. I don't know if that's comforting or just one more strange thing that happened slowly enough for me not to notice. Everything smells green and wet and tired, and I should probably shower and change into my work clothes and stop sitting out here like a woman in a cigarette ad for a sad life she chose herself. But it feels nice out here. It's just quiet. I'll talk to you later, Jack. Jack, it's 3:11 p.m. and I'm in my car. I left a little earlier than I needed to because I didn't want to sit in the cabin all afternoon alone with my mind. There's a particular kind of misery in killing time before an evening shift. You can't settle into the day because a part of you is already gone and putting on an apron somewhere. The rain hasn't really stopped yet. It eased up once around noon, and I thought maybe that was it. Maybe the clouds had finally wrung themselves out enough to leave us alone. But then it came back. Not really harder, just stubborn. That's the word for it. Stubborn little rain. I took the old church road again. I don't know why I keep doing that when I know perfectly well what's been out there lately. Maybe because it feels like a dare if I don't. Maybe because some part of me wants to keep proving that roads stay roads even when your mind has gotten all theatrical about them. I'm pulled over on the shoulder now, right where that deer had been, and it's just gone. The deer, I mean, and the flowers. All of it. There's no body in the grass, there's no upside-down little garden, no petals stuck in the cracks of the road, and you would think that would feel like a relief. And maybe it is, Jack. Maybe some county truck came through and took the poor thing away. Maybe whoever put the flowers there got bored with whatever ugly little ritual they were making and moved on. Maybe the rain flattened it all out into mud, and I'm giving the weather too little credit. Still, it looks so empty out here it feels almost staged, like somebody came through and cleaned up the scene too well. The rain looks like threaded silver in my headlights even though it's barely afternoon. There's something about rainy days in Cedar Bend that makes time feel spoiled, Jack. Like morning and evening bleed into each other too early and never really get to separate. I still got some time before I need to be at the diner, and I should probably get going. Hold on. Jack, there's something up ahead. I didn't notice it at first because the road bends a little here and the trees crowd in, and the rain blurs everything if you don't keep your eyes sharp, but I think there are cars up there. More than one, definitely. I'm gonna pull back into the road. Just hang on, Jack. Okay, yeah, there's a sheriff's car off to the side of the road and another police car behind it, and Jack, there's a white van too. Not an ambulance, I don't think so. It doesn't look like one from here. There are people standing near, a few of them, not many, 3 or 4 maybe. They're all facing towards the river side of the road, and I'm slowing down. I know I shouldn't rubberneck, I know that's ugly, but everybody in a small town gets a little ugly around police lights, don't they? Everybody wants to know whose day just got split open. Maybe it's nothing, Jack. Maybe somebody slid off the road into the rain. Maybe some fisherman found something he wasn't meant to, and now everybody's standing around being solemn over old bones or stolen tools, or whatever people end up finding near water when the town gets too quiet. I can't really see past the cars yet. Hang on. Somebody's coming up from the bank. It's 2 men? No, 3. Jack, they're carrying a body bag. Oh, God. They're carrying a body bag from down by the river, and